All right, so tonight we checked out a brand new 2025 found footage horror film called Looky-loo. This is currently available to rent. I think it's the first movie ever that you can rent on the Found app, which is a app specifically for found footage films. But over on Fossum, it's free to watch. And I had seen a bunch of things on Fossum, like here and there, when I go to look on Just Watch. And typically when it's on Fossum, it's on Tubi. But this is one of those rare occasions where it didn't say Tubi, although, I mean, it could be there, but I didn't look. So I actually downloaded Fossum and we watched it. And I will say that with Fossum, we didn't get an ad for almost an hour. It was like 50 minutes or so before we got one. And so much so that I was like, does this not have ads? Like, that's not possible. How's that? Anyway, so it is free on Fossum as of right now. So if you want to watch it for free, it's there. If you want to pay for it, you can go over the Found, platform streaming app. I always wonder, is it Found or Found TV? I think it's just Found. Anyway, all right. So this is about pretty much like the daily life activity of a serial killer, a slash
stalker
Looky-loo. I mean, there's the title for you. Yep. So this film has very little dialogue, almost none. I mean, there's a few words here and there, but it's just essentially a guy with a camera walking around, being a peeping Tom, getting up in people's lives without them knowing it, and eventually taking it to a place where he kills them.
Yep.
You know, overall, I like the film for sure. It is definitely a nightmare for, like, this is kind of like your worst fears come true, right? When you're at home alone at night.
Oh, yeah.
And you think, like, maybe there's someone in your room or whatever. So I think this is, like, pure nightmare fuel for somebody who is afraid of having their privacy invaded and feeling like they're being watched, or maybe someone's in my house. Or it does a very, very good job at that. This genuinely feels like a snuff tape.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
And I think this is the kind of movie that is like, while I will give it a recommendation and a thumbs up, and I'll rate it fairly high for a found footage film, it's a one-time watch, because I don't think that there's much more to get out of it than the one view. It's so, like, one note, rinse, lather, repeat. The whole film is like, he does something, he goes to a person's house, he follows them home, he watches them, he hides in their house, he kills them. And then next person. It's just kind of like, it is a little bit repetitive and I don't know. So rewatching, I feel like I've already seen the movie 6 times, because it's like the same movie 6 times in a row.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I did like it. I think it feels hyper realistic for sure. It's very low budget. You know, there's not any like on-screen gore or anything like that, but it still, I think, manages to pull off that like very realistic, very genuine feel, which makes it really creepy and unsettling. You know, some people, that's not what they want to watch in a found footage film. I do not blame you if you don't want to watch something that feels like it could be a snuff film. It is pretty disturbing, like when you kind of like get into that space where you're like, oh, it's not found footage, it's real, you know, the suspension of disbelief. But I agree with what you said, though. I think it is kind of a one-time watch. I think it's a good one-time watch, but after, I have no real interest in like going back and visiting it again, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of, I guess, you know, a little limited maybe in that sense.
Sure. Well, the reason here, of course, being that with these types of films where we're following a killer and the killer has no dialogue, and there's just a lot of him walking around, filming people from a distance, walking through their house, looking through things, this escalation of what he does to them. It just, there's not much more to get from the film because there's no characters that you relate to. There's no funny, witty dialogue. There's nothing memorable outside of like how unsettling it feels while watching it.
Right.
And that's like a good experience if you're that kind of person that could be into this type of thing, right? But because the film has no characterization, it has no plot, it has nothing really to revisit it for, right? There's nothing comfy about the movie. There's nothing that's quotable. There's nothing that's going to really stick in your memory other than I'm going to check my fucking closet tonight when I go to bed, which is good and it's effective, and I think it's well made in that regard, and this guy is a sick fuck. And one thing that you definitely feel during the movie is not only do you feel kind of powerless to this because if someone comes up behind you and just fucking slits your throat or whatever, I mean,
what are you supposed to do?
Like unless you have like, you're trained and like you have
spidey senses.
Yeah, you can fucking hear something other people can't. But in all reality, as much as the movies try to glorify these like badass guys that are women that can't be taken down or whatever, we're all extremely vulnerable to being taken by surprise. And some people obviously fortify their houses better. And that's another thing with this film, which I really like. And I think the reason this feels so hyper-realistic is because it really takes its time to set up his, like, MO.
Yeah.
And he walks around, he follows people home. It's all random.
Yeah.
He walks around the house, he investigates their life. If they're alone, he'll pursue. If they have a family, he'll leave. He walks around, he checks doors all throughout town, different handles. He looks under doormats. He gets into everybody's shit looking for hide keys. Like, it's very, very hyper-realistic, and it makes you want to, after and during watching the film, you're like, I need to change like how
change my locks.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of movie where it's like, I think most people, like, you have routines that you get into and you really don't think anything of them, but like if somebody was watching you, they could figure out your routines pretty quickly, like, because for most people, you're a creature of habit, unless you have a very spontaneous life and are always like doing different stuff. But for most of us, it's there's a lot of repetition. I think that aspect is captured really well, and it is very effective and very scary in a like super realistic way. We do need to change our locks now.
It's an extremely upsetting film because there's no fun to be had in any way, shape, or form. We watch slashers and there's like these crazy teens that are up to these funny antics.
Yeah, it's such
and
a different vibe.
This is nothing like
so
this. This is a very upsetting film because it reminds me of something like Megan is Missing or the Poughkeepsie tapes. Anything typically from the killer's perspective for the most part.
Is usually not fun and whimsical
in
the way that like
there's nothing fun. And this has some homages to like a film like Maniac. We don't really learn much about the killer other than like his habits of stalking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't know anything about him otherwise. And I don't know if there is much more about him. This seems to be his entire fixation.
Again, feels very realistic because it's like the whole focus is like on his victims, and you're sort of like, left to just imagine like why he's doing what he's doing. It doesn't really matter why he's doing what he's doing, but like you don't have any real, like you said, like you don't know anything about him and what's going on.
I wanted to jump through the TV and stop him and kill him every single time that he would attack a victim. You feel powerless watching it. You're just sitting there, you're the voyeur.
It is so interesting how like we can watch, something like a Friday the 13th, or a Halloween. And those have become so iconic for people. And, we've talked about this before, where people come to the movies for the killers in those, where you're just like kind of like rooting for people to die because you want to see how creative the kills are. You just, want to see the killer go on a rampage. But when you get something that's a lot more intimate and much more realistic, like it's a totally different tone. And you just are not in the same headspace, like, whatsoever. Like, even though it is also still fictitious, and it's, like, not a real person killing real people, it's just, like, a totally different atmosphere. And you're, like, not even close to being anywhere on the same side as the killer. Not that you necessarily are in, those other ones, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, I do.
So,
yeah, I want to beat this guy to death, for sure. But yeah, so other than that, we ended up also finding a very cool band and song that plays at the very end of the movie by a artist called Harvey Poe.
Harley Poe?
Harley?
I think it's Harley Poe.
Yeah, Harley Poe.
I'm a Killer?
I'm a Killer was the name of the song, but then we started listening to the other songs on Spotify from him. We just kind of skimmed through like maybe 3 or 4 songs, and I was like, this is totally my kind of artist.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, something I can take away from this film in addition to that is maybe a new band.
Yeah.
That they sound like the Violent Femmes a lot, or your band.
Yeah, the Andrew Jackson Jihad.
AJJ, if you want to look for them on Spotify. If you like this band, check out AJJ, like Kaylee just said, or the Violent Femmes, which I'm assuming you've heard of. But other than that, yeah, it's a good one-time watch that's very upsetting and angering, and would be completely devastating to watch for anybody, basically, anybody who has a heart, but just for anybody who has this fear of someone breaking in your house, coming and invading your privacy.
Just there's so many shots of like peeking out of closets, and like we talked about like after how both of us, like when we're alone and we walk our dog, you leave the door unlocked, you go out, you walk your dog, you come back in, and like we both always are like, somebody's in the house. Like somebody came in while I was walking the dog and is hiding somewhere. And it's like an intrusive thought, because I'm like, no, nobody came in, but I mean, somebody could come in, technically, and they could just hide somewhere. And it's like, I don't come in from walking the dog and like check the whole house for somebody,
I sometimes do, and I always check the back seat of my car when I get into it.
Oh yeah,
100% of the time.
Yeah,
without fail.
I also actually get kind of scared sometimes if I'm showering alone. Like if you're not home and like nobody's home and I get in the shower, I'm always like prepared for somebody to come in, like kind of ready to fight a little bit. Like I just think about it. But thankfully we have a dog, so he'll be a little alarm system for intruders, and also, some protection.
Yeah, get a dog. Don't have a hideaway key outside in an obvious place.
Just don't have a hideaway key. If you lose your key,
if you have one, put it somewhere nowhere near the door. Something that would be very, very complicated to find.
Go bury it in your yard.
Have it have a code. Like have a lock on it, where you have to you have to find it first, and then you have to unlock it.
Yeah.
The fact that people just have them out, where you just flip open a little thing, or it's right under the doormat. I mean, some of these, and lots of people have this shit under doormats.
Oh yeah, there's all these like common places on the top of the like door. Yeah. Keep your windows closed at night, especially if you live alone. Yeah. That's another big thing. You don't want no looky-loos.
You do not.
Peeking in at you.
So yeah, Fossum. Yeah. Check it out. Let us know. Anything more?
No.
All right. We'll see you in the comments.
Bye.
Bye.